Let's talk about a guy brought to you by your Tri-State Cadillac dealers. Francisco Lindor coming off his best season with the Mets, carrying the team to the playoffs. Hannah, what are your expectations for Lindor going into the 2025 season?
Okay, we were just talking about how, like, everyone knows Aaron Judge, best hitter in baseball. I just looked this up coming into this segment because I was curious. Since the start of 2022, so the last 3 seasons combined, Aaron Judge has the highest Fangraphs WAR in all of Major League Baseball. Second is Francisco Lindor, and a lot of that is his defense. So you're not necessarily seeing it in the back of the baseball card stats, but he's an incredibly consistently productive player. Now, going into this year, it's hard to say he will replicate what he did last year because, like David Stern said, maybe the best position player season from a New York Met ever. And the thing that gives me a little bit of pause is the back injury. When he came back at the end of that season and was so good and so clutch and so key to that postseason run, it was like, oh my gosh, maybe he's totally fine. The back thing, nothing. But at that point, you could see the finish line and you knew what you were playing for. Going back to the beginning of the season, the starting line, 162-game gauntlet, 6-month season. So I think it would be a little bit unfair to expect him to replicate that season. But if you take out that first season in New York, his career as a Met has been incredibly consistent production.
I don't know. I personally feel like he could replicate some of this because, I mean, if you remember the beginning of last year, he got off to like a pretty atrocious start to the point where Mets fans were actually booing him. And his wife had to go, be publicly say, hey, can you please simmer it down? So this was a man that started off very, very slow and then was able to turn it on when they needed it the most. In addition to that, I mean, look at his production after the back injury. When I look at Francisco Lindor, I don't just look at the offense and the defense. I also look at him as a guy who really knows how to take care of his body. Because for such a physically demanding role, he plays so many games out of the year. I mean, you're talking 160 games. Even when he hurt his finger, he played 160 games that year. So you add all that, his home run numbers went up last year. His strikeout numbers went down. He could be getting better. So I think this is a guy, especially with Pete Alonso and Juan Soto in the lineup, that could exceed last year's.
I think those are excellent points. Also, to your point, Laura, about the fans, there was, going into the last season and during last season, there was still that pressure and that conflict between Lindor and Mets fans. Now that is gone, where this relationship between the two are as great as it's ever been, and I feel like that would make it easier for Lindor to thrive and also not have as much pressure on him because of the other guys, specifically Soto, in that lineup. JJ, with all that, I do feel like Lindor is the most disrespected player, not only in New York, but overall. Like, the guy hasn't been an All-Star. I know the slow starts. He still should have been an All-Star the last couple of years. He has the 8th best odds right now to win the NL MVP. Is that fair, considering what he did a year ago?
So yes and no. Your point about Lindor not being an All-Star as a Met is an absolute joke. I mean, how he didn't go to the game last year is still beyond me. But as far as the odds to win MVP, I pulled them up right before the break, and I'm looking at the names on the list. I think it is fair because you have Juan Soto with the New York Mets. Ohtani is a ridiculous
he's going to win.
He's plus 145. But then a couple of other names, I'm looking at them now. Bryce Harper is ahead of Francisco Lindor. I understand why, because he is the dog for the Philadelphia Phillies. There's not that same level of competition. You have Kyle Tucker ahead of him, and then Ellie De La Cruz. If the Reds end up having a big-time season, he's going to steal a gazillion bases and hit a ton of home runs. I get the odds makers, Sal, putting Lindor 8th for MVP. I still think he's 30-30. I still think he has a monster year. The question is Juan Soto going to steal some of his thunder?
Yeah, and by the way, that would be a great thing for the Mets team, right? Individually, you want one of those guys to win the MVP. Great thing if they're both stealing votes away, because it would mean they're both having MVP-type seasons.